I was watching a video last night. I think it was on YouTube, but it might have been on some of the channel. And well, there's a small section in it which wasn't really to do with what the main video was about. But it was this woman talking about Christianity, and she was making a distinction between what she called, I think she called it official Christianity, and Gnostic Christianity. And she said that, and I don't know how true this is just what I remember her saying, was that whereas official Christianity basically told a story to do with sin and redemption, Gnostic Christianity used the same symbols, the same narratives, the same features to tell a story of ignorance and enlightenment. Which I thought was very interesting, actually. I thought, particularly something like the Jesus story, about how in the narrative Jesus, as either the Son of God or some version of some almighty being of some kind, has to die in order to get rid of original sin, and the human race becomes redeemed as a result of that. It's a hugely problematic story for me, I have to say. The idea that some poor individual had to be tortured to death for crimes he didn't commit, and that I'm not the person responsible for. I don't feel as if I've got any original sins that need redeeming by someone else's self-sacrifice. But nevertheless, it's an interesting story, and the fact that it's repurposed in Gnostic terms to be a story of ignorance and illumination, I'm not quite sure how that would work, actually. I haven't really thought through the details of that. Again, it's quite interesting. But it did get me thinking about original sin again, which, as I say, I have some problems with, to say the least. But I'm just trying to think what that might mean in terms of kind of an extended version of what it means to be a person, which is something I've been occupying my time with recently. Because I think I've mentioned in a couple of these videos, this idea that a person is solely and entirely defined by the kind of limited space-time of this piece of meat that we walk around in may not be entirely useful and possibly not even accurate. Yeah. So in this kind of extended version of what it means to be a person, what it means to be a self, does something like original sin or the Gnostic narrative of ignorance and illumination, does that play out in that extended version of self? So I'm thinking about original sin, and the point of contact I have that with a concept is a kind of genetic concept, I suppose. It's going to sound so politically incorrect, but never mind. When I go and see my mum is 93, one of the things that we always avoid is any conversation to do with race, actually. She's not particularly racist. She's not a member of the BNP or anything like that. But like most people her age, she is a little bit racist. Most people in the 90s, I think, seem to be a little bit racist. Other than that, she's a very nice person, really. But if I was to go back a few more generations, just 2 or 3 generations, I would find people who were very racist. And I would find people who were very homophobic. A couple of generations further back than that, and I would be finding people who were slave owners. I would be finding people who were quite happy with torture and genocide. I would be finding people who were, very happy to consider women a subordinate sex. And a few more beyond that, and I'm sure I'd be finding people who consider people from other races to be barely human at all. And I'll be finding quite routine acts of cruelty in day-to-day life. So I suppose what I'm saying there is that, if I am, if I am owning up to my, to the history of my species and the history of my family, I have to own up to some pretty reprehensible behaviour at various points in that story. Now, of course, it wasn't me who committed those things. I didn't own slaves, and I don't remember torturing anybody. And I don't consider myself particularly racist. But since this conception of me, this extended version of me, which is a series of biochemical, evolutionary, ecological narratives and processes that run through a person, with this person that I am being just kind of standing wave in that set of cross-cutting currents, then I would have to own up to it. I would have to say, yes, there is part of my narrative that has those things in. And to the extent that I think those things are wrong, I would have to acknowledge that they are sins, and they are sins that I have to acknowledge as part of my extended being. I'm not quite sure I transform those into redemption, and I'm certainly not quite sure how the Jesus narrative would figure in that. But that's something I would need to think about. And now I have to put my dogs on leads, because my dogs are kind of genetically predisposed to fight with other dogs. So I have to take care of that.